Okay, it is a new year, which means it's time to start, the ongoing ranking of horror films of 2025, and today will be part one. I plan on doing, 4 episodes of this, ongoing horror tier list of 2025. I'm probably going to do part two around June-ish, part three, September, October, and then part four around December. And yeah, this will be ongoing, in part two, around June-ish is kind of what I'm thinking. We're just going to continue where we left off today. So, the movies you see ranked here will show up in June in part two, and then so on and so forth. We're just going to keep adding and adding until the final episode in December, where this whole tier list is just going to be full of horror films. So yeah, today is part one. I'm going to rank some horror films that I've seen this year so far. And without further ado, let's rank some horror films. Okay, let's start with Companion, directed by Drew Hancock, starring Sophie Thatcher and Jack Quaid. And man, this movie was a treat. This was a lot of fun. I had a blast with Companion. It is a movie that introduces rules and lays the foundation of what the rule set is of this world. And the cool thing about this movie is it explores those rules and escalates using these rules. And I love that kind of stuff. I love when rules are introduced of like, this is how things work. This is how, and it expands and it expands. And then, throughout the movie, it keeps returning to these rules and how it can be manipulated and how these rules work. This movie does that a lot, and I love that. I think it's so much fun. Like, for instance, in the beginning of the movie, there's, without spoiling too much if you haven't seen it, there's something to do with, like, language and how language is used. And then that comes back later with a scene with a sheriff, with an officer. And, I just love that kind of stuff. Or even just, like, intelligence, Intelligence is brought up, early in the film, and then intelligence comes into play later. I just love how this film just keeps building and building on these ideas and these rule sets, and just fantastic. It keeps you interested throughout the whole film. There's not a moment in this film where I was bored or wanted things to move on. I do think the end is a little messy and rushed, but overall, like, as a whole, I think Companion is one of the best horror films we've got this year. And there is just like back and forth I'm having with the movie in terms of like what the story is and what the trailer reveals. Because, the movie is called Companion. If you've seen the trailer, you kind of know what Companion is. But there's a moment where the movie treats Iris, the main actress of the film, the main character of the film, played by Sophie Thatcher, they play her kind of straight, if that makes sense. Again, I'm trying to not be spoilerish here, but they kind of play her straight. But you already know as an audience member who she is or what she is. And then there's a moment where, at the end of the first act, there's a murder, and then there's kind of a reveal of who she really is. And I thought that would be a really cool moment if we didn't know, what she is. Like when her eyes go white. I mean, her eyes are white in this poster, so that's not really a spoiler. But when her eyes go white, how cool of a moment that would have been, like sitting in a theater not knowing that was going to happen. But at the same time, the movie's called Companion, and you got to pitch Companion, so, you kind of have to reveal it in the trailer, but I don't know. As I was sitting there, I'm like, man, that would have been a cool reveal if we didn't know all this stuff. And especially, like, everyone's acting weird in the first 30 minutes. They're treating Iris, like, in a weird way. You're like, why are they treating her like this? And then you get the reveal, and you're like, oh, okay. But yeah, again, we all kind of knew what was coming, so that was kind of a bummer. But overall, Companion's great. It's a lot of fun. Sophie Thatcher and Jack Quaid are killing it. Jack Quaid especially. Like, I can't wait to see his new movie. What is it called? Novocaine. I think he's wonderful. This movie's very smart. It's very funny. Just an overall a blast of a film. So we're going to give Companion an A. All right, The Monkey, Osgood Perkins' follow-up film to Longlegs, based on a short story by Stephen King. I was really looking forward to The Monkey. I was one of the people who loved Longlegs. That movie was way up my alley, and I think last year I ranked it as A on my tier list. And Longlegs is one of my favorite movies of the summer, and it was one of my favorite horror films of the year. Personally, I really loved it. So yeah, The Monkey I could not wait for. And It was okay. It was okay. I don't think it's anywhere as good as Long Legs, but it's a lot of fun. It's a very different tone than Long Legs. This is a comedic horror. Although, to be fair, for me, I didn't really laugh in this movie. It got a couple good chuckles out of me, but this movie isn't particularly scary or funny. It's amusing. I would say it's amusing, but yeah, it's a different thing than Long Legs, which, for the people who didn't like Long Legs, I would imagine that this would be a little more up their alley. In fact, if I were to guess, I would say that the people who hated Long Legs may enjoy this more. It's gory, it's silly, it's a little more digestible. And yeah, but overall, it was okay. When the credits rolled, I was just kind of like, okay, that was a fun ride, I suppose. But yeah, some fun, interesting kill scenes. Very gory, very, very gory, over the top. Theo James is great here. He's kind of playing a dual role. He plays twin brothers. And I would say the jerk brother is kind of forced towards the end. They kind of just force him into a role where I was like, okay, I guess we're rolling with this. And also his motivations and how he's going about things doesn't make a whole lot of sense in terms of like, you probably could have gone about this in a different way, in a more logical way than what he actually ends up doing. But, when you stop and think about it, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But you're along for the ride. It's pretty fun. I wish there was more build-up to some of the kills, although, maybe it would be compared to Final Destination in that regard. Because Final Destination, when there's a kill, it takes a long time. It's setting things up. This moved, and then this moved, and this happened, and then you get the kill. Whereas the monkey, the kills just happen. Like, they're so quick and so just like unexpected, which is kind of the charm and silliness of the film. But yeah, I would have loved a little bit more build up to the kills, because they throw a lot at you. There's even a montage of people getting killed. Great opening. I thought the opening of this movie was fantastic. I'm not going to spoil. There's a cameo, I guess you would call it, in the beginning of the film. I'm not going to spoil who's in it, but there is a known actor who's in the beginning, opening like 5 minutes of the film. A lot of fun. But yeah, overall, it's okay. It's okay. It was a pretty fun movie, but nothing all that memorable, if I'm being honest. So I'm gonna give Monkey a B. Okay, Opus, the new horror film out of A24, starring Ayo Debris and John Malkovich. I just saw this last night, so it's fresh in my brain. And, yeah, gotta say, pretty disappointed. This movie is like the definition of just bleh. Like, when the movie ended, it was just like, okay, that was fine, I guess. Yeah, there's almost like a subgenre in the last couple years of, like, stories about a protagonist who goes to an island, whether it's, an island of, a very rich person or a cult. There seems to be a lot of these films popping up. As an example, like Blink Twice, Glass Onion. I think Midsummer would probably be the closest connection to a movie like this, a movie like Opus. And yeah, this movie just doesn't... There's a lot going on in this movie. There's a lot of themes and ideas thrown at you, but none of them really hit. To the point where, like, at the end, John Malkovich is giving a speech, and I think that the movie wants it to be more profound than it actually is, to the point where I was like, okay, I like where the movie ends with the character. I'm not going to spoil anything, but I liked where the movie ends with the main character. But, like, as a whole, as it, like, wrapped up, I was just kind of like, that was it? Okay. And most of the movie is Ariel. She's a journalist. She's been invited to John Malkovich's, compound cult. He's a famous musician, and he hasn't made an album in, like, 30... No one's even seen him in, like, 30 years. He hasn't made an album in 30 years. And he kind of just shows up out of the blue and says, I'm dropping a new album. And he invites a bunch of, like, known people, journalists, influencers, paparazzis, people from his past, and most of the movie is like her just walking around this compound and gaining information, but none of the mysteries are all that interesting. The movie just kind of comes around at a snail's pace, up to a point where I'm like, okay, can we just like yada 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 to the end, because nothing that we're watching is really all that interesting or thrilling for a movie like this. I don't know, like there's no atmosphere, there's no tension. I don't know. It was just kind of like I said, just blah. It's fine, I guess. The acting is great. There are some cool moments in the film. There are cool horror moments, in the film. But like overall, I was pretty bummed. A24 usually brings it when it comes to horror, but lately, I don't know. I feel like some of their output with horror has been a little bit lacking. I feel like Neon is starting to kind of come out from the shadows and start giving us some bangers, while A24 is kind of like But yeah. Anyways, Opus, it was fine. Pretty much, it was kind of a letdown. Yeah, that's kind of a bummer. So we're gonna give Opus a. I don't think it's a D. I think it's a C. It's fine. It's okay. Not great. Not the best thing in the world. Definitely not the worst. Okay, Heart Eyes. I would say out of all of the horror films I've seen this year, this was the biggest surprise. Heart Eyes was the biggest surprise I've seen so far this year. And that's because, I watched the trailer, before it was released, and I'm like, okay, here's a throwaway slasher. It's holiday themed. This movie is going to be bland and stupid. It turned out not the case. This movie is a blast. This movie is so much fun. A memorable slasher icon killer guy, which we don't really get these days. I think the only one you can make an argument for is Art the Clown from the Terrifier series. And so yeah, it was kind of cool to see, a new horror villain and cool design, cool ideas. Like at one moment, he's in a dark area and his eyes light up in red and he can see night vision. This movie's very funny. It's very charming. I think it goes a little bit too hard in cartoonish land. I think the main characters are pretty grounded. I like the two main characters. But everyone around them seems like a cartoon character. For instance, Allie's boss is not a real person. She's a cartoon character. A lot of the cops in this movie are not real people. They are cartoon characters. All of the supporting cast in this movie just feels like they're not actual people and just cartoon characters. So that was kind of off-putting, but the two main characters, there's a lot of chemistry. I cared about them. This is a horror film where I cared about the two characters. A lot of cool death scenes, a lot of interesting death scenes. This movie is very funny. There's a moment where this is in the trailer, so it's not too much of a spoiler. But Hard Eyes kills somebody with a tire iron, and then you think that's kind of it, and then they come back to that tire iron. I don't know. It's very clever and very unique. I thought this was just going to be a throwaway BS movie, but no, it's really, really fun. I'm probably going to revisit this someday. It's I don't know, there's something special. Something special. They knew what they were making with Hard Eyes. They knew the tone. They leaned into it. Yeah, it's a blast. A lot of cool set pieces too. I don't know, man. Hard Eyes really won me over. It was a lot. I mean, I had very low expectations, so maybe that was why. But yeah, Hard Eyes was a blast. This may piss a lot of people off, but I'm putting Hard Eyes in A. Man, that movie was so much fun. Wolfman, Lee Whannell's follow-up to Invisible Man. Yeah, this, as of now, as of recording this, as of March, whatever day it is, this might be the most boring horror film I've seen this year. This movie was a damn slog, which sucks because the first 10 minutes of this film, maybe not 10, the opening sequence of this movie is so good. It is so good. I felt like in the first 5-7 minutes, I'm like, oh, here we go. I feel like I'm in good hands. There's good moments of tension. I like what's happening. This is going to be a fantastic film. This is going to be just as good as Invisible Man. And then after those 5 or 7 minutes happen, the rest of the movie just plummets. And the problem is that most of this movie takes place in one location with 3 characters. And the movie doesn't do anything interesting with this location. There's no moments of tension. I never felt on the edge of my seat. It is not scary. Yeah, it was such a slog. This movie was so boring, which sucks because there's actually some cool ideas in this movie that I actually dug. I enjoyed the visuals of what the Wolfman sees and what it looks like. I thought that was really cool. There's a moment where like the main character who just got bitten, he's like hearing loud noises, like big booming sounds, and he's like walking around the house trying to figure out what's making the sound. And then when you find out what that sound actually is, I'm like, oh, that's a cool idea. There's a lot of cool ideas in this movie, but overall, like nothing really happens in this movie, and it's just like, it was so just dull and dry, and just I wanted to fall asleep. In fact, if I fell asleep, it probably would have been better use of my time and then watching the rest of this movie. Even the transformation scene was pretty lackluster. I mean, Wolfman movies are known for their, excellent transformation scenes. Arguably that's why, one of the reasons why we love Wolfman movies is to see how the director and the effects team, tackle the transformation scene of Wolfman. And this one was just like it was like nothing. I could barely remember it. Like, it was unmemorable. They kind of just fly through it. They don't really take a lot of attention to detail. It's over before it begins. And yeah, this movie was not very good. So we're going to give Wolfman the last tier list right here at the bottom with the D. Okay, the last movie I want to talk about today that I'm going to rank is a movie that I kind of struggled with including in this video because technically I wouldn't consider this a horror film, but everyone else is considering it a horror film, and it's like horror adjacent to the point where I guess I can include it. So yeah, let's talk about this last one. And that is Steven Soderbergh's Presence. Like I said, I don't really consider this a horror film. I would consider this, a drama with some kind of like horror elements. But I mean, look at the quote on the top of this poster. It terrifies you, then leaves your heart on the floor. It terrifies you? I don't know about that. Maybe some people find this movie to be terrifying, I guess, but I don't find this movie to be scary in the least. I think this is way more dramatic than it is scary. But again, it is horror adjacent. It does have to deal with ghosts, spooky ghost. But yeah, so Presence. Yeah, it was okay. It was okay. This is a movie you really have to be in the mood for. If you're just like in a horror mood, you're like, yeah, I want to get the scares and the gore and the atmosphere, and you pick Presence, you're probably going to be disappointed. This is a movie better suited for people who like Terrence Malick films. It's very slow in pacing, a lot of long takes, a lot of like somber, melancholy, feelings to it. But overall, I think the story and the point of view is really cool. This is a movie that has a point of view of the ghost. So everything you see is from the ghost's perspective. So the movie just kind of floats around and watches all of the characters, having arguments, having experiences with other people. And the movie just kind of floats through the plot. My biggest complaint of this movie is that there is a villain, and, it's one of those things where this guy, it's a kid, this kid is evil enough as it is. Like, what he's doing, what he's up to is evil enough as it is, and it's like, oh man, this guy sucks. But then they like add an extra layer of like, oh, he's responsible for this other thing, and it's just like, it's all too convenient. I'm like, we didn't really need to do this. And then there's a moment where like there's a character at the very end who intervenes and prevents a big moment from happening in the climax, and it's like, it escalates from like 0 to 100, where it's just like, why did he do that? Why did, he could have gone about stopping this situation in a different way, but it leads to like, the most outlandish situation. But yeah, overall, this is an experience movie, I guess I would call it. Again, I think this is a movie you have to be in the mood for and know what you're getting before you go in. I imagine the Rotten Tomatoes audience score for this is pretty low. That would be my guess, but I haven't looked. But overall, it's fine. It's fine. It's okay. So to me, this is tough. This is tough. It's either going in C or B. I don't think it's an A, and I don't think it's a D. I did like it. Oof. But it wasn't like the most entertaining movie in the world. Like, I don't know if I'm going to ever rewatch this. So I'm going to go C with Presence. I love Steven Soderbergh. The man's great. I can't speak. I can't wait to watch Black Bag this weekend. I think my review will be coming out soon. So yeah, I love Steven Soderbergh, but yeah, Presence, it was fine. It was fine. Okay, that wraps up part 1 of 2025 horror films ranked. Like I said, I will be back in June. We will add more movies to this list. You know, obviously, we're going to talk about Sinners. We're going to talk about 28 Years Later. What is it? The Clown in the Cornfield. Like, there's a lot of horror films between now and June. So yeah, I will come back in June with part 2. So please hit that subscribe button if you want to see more, and continue with me on this journey throughout the year. But yeah, in recap, we got Companion and Hard Eyes in A, Monkey in B, Opus and Presence in C, and Wolfman in D. Thank you so much for watching. What do you think of my ranking? Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to know your thoughts. Until the next time, I will see you on the next one.